Hi, Brett.
Hey Claire, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm great. It's another beautiful day at Compass.
We're going to get to know a little bit more about Compass and you in particular as one of the co-founders as a way to kind of show people what led you to start the company and what in your background was supportive of that effort.
All right, yeah, that sounds like a good time. I'm ready.
All right, let's jump in. My first question is about your background and the fact that you spent years managing massive construction projects. That was all before you started Compass. What made you leave that world to start a residential construction company?
I mean, I won't lie, there's some days I ask myself the same question. A couple of different things. My background is I worked at Mortensen Constructions. I worked on a lot of much larger scale commercial projects. Clients like Freighted Hospital, or Healthcare, Polar Company, Facebook, my last project I worked on. And I learned a lot there. Mortensen's an amazing company, and I learned how construction takes place and how to do so in a really high way of executing.
Yeah.
And at a point in my career there, I had been transferred to a project down in Illinois, so I was traveling for work. I didn't like it. That's when I was working on a data center for Facebook. And I'd always wanted to start a business, and I had been playing around in the residential space a little bit as a real estate investor. I'd done several home remodels, both my own, and I flipped some properties. I had some rental properties I had remodeled several times, and it had dawned on me just how primitive the residential remodeling space was in comparison to the commercial space. In the commercial world, when you're doing a $40 million project, which was pretty typical for me when I was working on, you really have to be systems oriented, and you have to have great systems to ensure you execute that project at a high level. And I just never saw any of that in the residential world. I hired a lot of subcontractors. Sometimes they'd show up, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they'd surprise you with extra cost of things late in the project that you didn't really have budgeted. The schedules were never consistent, quality was never consistent, and it always felt to me like there was space for a company to come in and operate in the residential world in a similar way as commercial companies operate in their world, with systems, it's just a really organized way of approaching construction. And that was what my inspiration was for the business with my co-founder, William. And let's build a company that does things differently, and does it differently in a way that allows us to deliver projects that have really high level of quality, consistency, meeting expectations of clients, while also doing it at a fair price where people can afford.
I was not, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of that difference between commercial and residential in terms of construction and how they operate at a different level. And it's a whole different process. I like this idea that you're bringing those two things together, the best of both worlds. You mentioned commercial grade systems at one point. What does that mean for a homeowner?
If you've worked with a contractor, you probably haven't seen them because a lot of people aren't using them. But first thing and foremost is communication. How do you communicate with your client? When do you communicate with your client? What are you communicating with your client? Most companies are either small or even just solo operators where they're just kind of managing one or two projects at a time. And communication is very ad hoc, which can work at a small scale. But, we have systems in place of how to communicate with clients. We have certain minimum expectations of simply getting weekly updates out every Friday. And every week we send a written update to our clients. And that's a system we built to make sure that they understand what's going on. Project schedules. We have documented written project schedules that go out to our clients every week. How many contractors out there in the residential world don't even have a schedule? They might have a date that they've agreed they're going to be done by, which statistically I think it's something like 78% of construction projects go beyond schedule or are delivered late.
Wow.
But we have a task by task schedule that we build out and we adjust every week. And even to the point where we actually baseline the first schedule we ever give our client, and we show them, hey, this is your schedule we gave you on day one, and here's the schedule we're showing today, and here's why things are different, or here's what has changed. Things can change, especially in the residential world, but we always make sure that we are still on track to hit our final date, and we're able to communicate with our client what's happening. Sending out project schedules, making sure we have detailed scopes of work. So many contracts homeowners have showed me, they're hiring somebody to do their kitchen and the scope of work is 5 lines. And I'm like, how do you have a mutual understanding of what the contractor's even doing? That just leaves so much up for interpretation, which is going to inevitably lead to stress and probably somebody's expectations not being met during the project. So going into a project with a very detailed scope of work and making sure the client understands what you are doing and maybe what you're not doing because they asked you not to or whatever. But that's kind of the idea of systems, getting these systems in place that make it clear to our clients what we're doing, when we're doing it, why we're doing it, etc.
Yeah, that's huge. It's so much about organization.
100% organization. That's one of the words I had written down to talk about what sets Compass apart. We're a small business, we have limited resources, but being organized allows us to be extremely effective with those limited resources. And that's what commercial companies do so well. And that's how they ensure that these large commercial projects that you see, things like the Bucks Arena downtown, happen, look the way they're supposed to when they're done and are done on time. It's because they're organized.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And the other concept that I pulled out of what you were saying is communication, right? Communicating with the client.
100% communication. I literally just got done talking to one of my teammates today about how communication is the most important thing we do on a daily basis. It's so easy to devalue communication and think, oh, it's so annoying. I got to send an email. I got to text somebody, call somebody, whatever. I can't get my work done because I'm communicating. And I always encourage my team to reframe that thought. Communication is the most important thing you do every day, especially when it comes to your clients. It reduces all the stress for everybody, both our team and our clients, because everybody's on the same page. And that's the hardest thing with construction that people really don't realize. It's not just getting out there and doing the work. I always joke with our team, doing the work is the easy part. The hard part is doing it in a way that allows our clients to feel good about the process, feel like they understand what's happening and that they have a degree of control over everything. And most of my team members, they all know how to build stuff. We're good at that. But what they weren't ever maybe trained on or really practiced throughout their career is that communication piece. And that's something I'm constantly trying to train and retrain and provide feedback to our team on how we communicate with our clients and our vendors.
You guys are really becoming known for taking on projects that other contractors in the area don't want to touch, complicated projects. Can you give me an example of something where someone's come to you after being turned down by another construction company?
It happens, I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens periodically and regularly. The one that stands out to me is a project we finished, I want to say early last year. It sounded simple at the outset when we first started meeting with a client. It was a basement remodel, an old home in the Wauwatosa neighborhood. It was a pretty high design, what I would call a dense design, where we had a kitchen, we had a bathroom, we had a fireplace, and we had all these kind of detailed finishes in there. But there was a piece of the project the client wanted to do, but I think they, to some degree, resided themselves to thinking that maybe we won't be able to include this. It was a curved wood staircase that led from their first floor down to their basement. They already had a curved staircase from their first floor to their second floor, so they wanted to kind of mimic that going down to the basement. And we were one of, I think, 3 or 4 teams proposing on that project. And he had asked, is the staircase something you guys would take on? Do you have the ability to do this? And our team met to talk through his expectations, and we went back to him and said, yeah, we do think we can deliver this. And it was at that point the client had told me the other people looking at this job I'd asked to do that staircase, and none of them wanted to do it. None of them felt comfortable like they had the capability of doing it. And he spent a lot of time qualifying us to make sure, are you sure you could do this? And we had given him examples. We had showed him past project photos of curved drywall and curved wood finishes that our team members had done, and got him to the point where he felt confident. And we were able to execute that project at a super high level. We have a feature video on YouTube as well. It was all custom wood that went down the stair. We finished it all to match the existing wood on the first floor. Our team had a steam box on site where we were steaming wood to curve it to match the curve that we wanted to meet. We had to do a curved structural beam around the top of the stair that our team, we had engineered through our company. We engineered it, and then we had our team hand built it on site. So it was like a 20 ply system that they hand built on site, and it was a big feat.
As somebody who's seen that project, it's just gorgeous. And it's so unique. It's so historic looking, like you were saying. It matches the upper floor perfectly. So it looks like something that's been there. And if our listeners haven't seen that YouTube video, they should definitely check that out to see it for yourselves.
You hit on something good there, Claire, because we always talk as a team of, I hate when I go into a house that's been remodeled and you can tell that it's been remodeled, not because it's new and nice, right, but because there are like weird, stark differences between different spaces, and the new space almost looks out of place. And we talk a lot about when we finish remodeling a space, We want it to feel like it's always been this way. Not that it's even new. We want it to feel historic almost. And especially in Milwaukee, so many of the houses we work in are older, and we're not necessarily remodeling the entire home. We're doing a kitchen or a bath or part of the home. And for us, when we go into that design with our team, we want to make sure that when they're done, this feels congruent, is what we say. Like, it feels like this is all talking to each other. We're incorporating some of the original historic features where we can, while updating different finishes to some more modern things when it's appropriate, but ensuring that it doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that people do come to you with these complicated projects that other people have turned down. And I think sometimes that also goes with people having horror stories that they've been through with construction and remodeling, either from them trying to take it on themselves or them hiring a company that wasn't able to handle it. Why is there such a prevalence of these horror stories in construction and remodeling?
Yeah, that's a gnarly question, and we could probably spend all day talking about it. A couple of things come to mind. A lot of times, people in the residential remodeling space operating as contractors, they were tradesmen first. So they were carpenters, they were plumbers, they were whatever, right? And they decided they wanted to start a business. And they know a lot about their trade, but they don't necessarily know about communication skills. They don't know about organization. They don't know about the trades that they aren't as familiar with. Maybe they're not an electrician, and they don't know as much about electrical work. And I think that it leads to people maybe sometimes getting in over their heads. There's just a lot going on, a lot of stressors for them. And I think that's what leads to this horror story thing. Even though usually most contractors have best intent. They do mean well. They're trying to do a good job. They're trying to work really hard and make their clients happy. But because they didn't communicate what the plan was and what they were going to do, it just adds this layer of stress, and it leaves everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. Now the client feels like they can't trust the contractor anymore. Now the contractor feels like they can't trust the client anymore. And it just leads to this really toxic relationship that on a long project can just fester. I think that communication is the short answer to your question of why does everybody have these horror stories? It's communication. That's probably my number one thing.
You guys actually pay the client $500 a day if you're late, which is astounding. Has that ever happened? Like, have you had to follow through on that?
So, yes, it's true. We write it into our contracts. So our contracts state it. It's one of the things that we kind of promote as, like, I'll call it a part of our package of services that makes us a little bit unique. To answer your second question, no, we've never had to pay it out. It's, I'll say, not something we did for the entire history of the company. It's something we implemented early last year, and we have never been late ever since. We are on top. I like it for twofold. I like that it holds us accountable. I actually really like being held accountable, where there's a very clear expectation. Again, it's very clear. If we don't make this date, here is what will happen. I like that because it's clear to me, it's clear to the client, it's clear to my team on site, and they understand how important it is. And it also, motivates and makes sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And make sure that everybody on our team knows, hey, if we're late, this is a problem. It's not just like, oh, it's okay, we're a little late. It's, no, we made a commitment. We need to honor that commitment. And if we don't, there are consequences. But we haven't had to pay that out yet. I think we are very careful about when we create schedules that we make sure that they are accurate, that they build in some space for the unexpected, because that can be inevitable on most projects. Something unexpected will happen. So we like to build in a little bit of space for that. But we also we don't ever sandbag a schedule, right? We always want to make sure that we're getting things done as fast as possible. I mean, one of our other services to our clients is that we call it the pay upon completion guarantee, where, once after we start the project, our client only pays us after we've hit certain milestones that are outlined in their contract. So we're also, not only do we have the incentive of making sure we're on time so that we don't have this, penalty that we have to pay to our clients, but also we don't get paid until we finish the work. So we are incentivized to move as quickly as reasonably possible. We don't waste time. We don't sit on our hands and hang people out to dry for weeks on end and don't communicate with them. It's not our style. We want to go as fast as our client will allow us to go. We would never do that we wouldn't jeopardize the client's project experience to go quick, so we're not rushing, but we are also not wasting time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a massive incentive to you and the team, so I think it really demonstrates that to the client from early on. Is there anything else that you want to say about that idea of expectations and sort of how you're setting them for clients?
Other than that, it's hard. I totally see why clients have the experiences they have, why they have challenges with contractors. And, one of the things by doing stuff like what we're doing today is one of the things I like to do is try to educate clients, and I try to educate our team and help them understand, hey, this is what the client's perspective is. Did you understand that that's how they felt? A lot of times my team would say, or the subcontractors I work with, I never really thought about it from their perspective. And we're like, yeah, we have to think about things from the client's perspective, right? And I like to do the same thing with our clients to say, hey, I want you to understand what the world looks like to us on the construction side, the challenges that we're trying to navigate, and what we're doing to be your advocate and to take care of you and to make sure this project is a success. I like to educate them on those things. So I like to do stuff like this to help clients understand what challenges we're working with. And so maybe they give us a little bit of grace sometimes, because construction is challenging. It's one of the hardest industries out there. It has the highest failure rate of any business out there, more so than even restaurants, which we all associate with high failure rates.
Yeah.
Construction is worse, and it's a very challenging industry. But that doesn't mean we can't deliver for our clients at a high level. And I don't ever use that as an excuse. But we really think of our client, relationships as partnerships we talk a lot about, where, we have to be a partner together. We have to understand that we're working together towards this goal. It's not just, us working independently towards this goal, or you feeling like you're dragging us through this project. We want to work collaboratively with them and understand, what are your needs? What are your goals? How can we meet them along the way? And as things change, as things come up in their lives, how can we accommodate along the way, and just meet each other where we're at? And at the end of the day, I'm famous for at Compass saying, with all of our projects, we all have the same goal. We all want the project to be delivered on time, on budget, high level of quality, happy client, happy construction company. We want the same thing. The only thing we have to agree on is how we get there. And that's really what we spend all this time figuring out with our teams. But we all have the same goals. So we just want to create partnerships with our clients and, partnerships that last beyond the project.
Talk to me about the people actually doing the work. What makes a Compass project look and feel different when it's done?
Yeah, I think that, so to talk about the people, first of all, zoom out to a macro scale, right? So the construction industry has been losing tradespeople at a very rapid pace. Average age of a construction worker, in whether it's commercial or residential, is somewhere, I think it's 50 plus now. And that's because there are very few young people are moving into the trades. There's a shortage of workers. So that is all a preamble to say it's hard to find great people. And when we do decide to grow our team and add to our craft team, we interview a lot of people. We are very picky. We usually have them do a work day on site with us for one day as like a test day to make sure that they're jiving with the team. They actually can do what they say they can do. We've had so many times where, somebody comes in like, I can do this, I can do that. And then you go and say, okay, go do it. And they're like, well, I don't know. That's kind of challenging. And we're like, well, you said you can do it, right? So we've learned over the years of how to hire, but we're really looking for people that are just, just people who can communicate. I'll come back to the communication thing. It's important for me. It's baseline that people understand how to do their skills and how to do their trades. That's just baseline for us. But also they need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to work in a team. They need to really have attention to detail and care about craftsmanship. We talk about that around here all the time, is that we really want to have a team that takes pride in their work. That, what I love is on our team, they tell me about like how they were showing photos of the project they're working on to their friends and family, right? That makes me so happy, because that means they're proud of the work they're doing. And I want them to be proud, because I think they're doing hard, cool stuff that they should be proud of. In terms of the people, that's kind of the people that we are trying to bring onto our teams. And then why does a project look different? I think that the people we bring to those projects help them look different, and that's why they look different. And it starts not even at the end of the project, but I'd say during. And I'm famous for, I like to stop by job sites. I don't do it as often as I maybe did in the early days of Compass, but I try to stop by jobs on a regular basis. And I always have feedback for our team of what our job site looks like. How is our material being stored? Is it organized? Do we have dust containments up? Do we have clear signage for different things? Is the job safe? Are we making sure that there's no chance that the client's children could wander into the job site somehow and hurt themselves? I'm very, very picky about job sites, because I think that They need to be clean. They need to be organized because A, it makes us work more efficiently, more safely, but it also it's actually how we're perceived by our clients, right? If it's a messy job site, if it's unorganized, if there's stuff everywhere, it doesn't make us look professional. I have a real problem with that. So I'm famous for sending pictures to my project manager, my superintendent, going, what's going on with this? Can we get this cleaned up? I'd like to see this a little bit different or a little bit, a little more organized over here. Generally our team does a really good job, but it's something I'm constantly bringing up. So I want our jobs to look different during construction. And then at the end, we really have, I think of that attention to detail is really important. Getting, all the little things right. I used to do, I used to flip houses. We always used to talk about how the last punch list phase of a project is the hardest part, the last 10%, because you got all the stuff up, all the trims in, the paint's on the wall, countertops or cabinets are all in, and then you go through and you're like, well, this caulk joint doesn't look that good, or, this nail hole didn't get filled right, or there's this weird gap over here on the floor, can we fix this? And all those little details take a lot of energy to get right. I think that we try to put that extra energy into things and make sure that those details are right. If not, we'd like them to be right along the way so we don't have a big list at the end of things to fix.
Yeah.
But if there is, we'll get it done. I mean, we're not perfect. Sometimes we miss things and our client brings it up and we're like, you know what? Yeah, that could be a little bit better. Let's take care of that for you. We like to hold ourselves accountable to that because if we want to have pride in our work and we want to talk about craftsmanship the way we do, we have to walk the walk and we have to be willing to be held accountable. And so that's, I think, what makes our jobs at the end look very different is those attention to details. Making sure that those things are right. I mean, for me, there's just so many little things to obsess over. And even when it's, a client would walk through and think that everything is perfect, I probably would walk through that job and be like, yeah, well, I'm always finding little things to nitpick, which is not always fair to our team. But, I like to set a high standard. And that way, if you shoot for the moon and if you miss and, shoot for the stars and if you miss, hopefully you land on the moon, right?
Well, and it sounds like that's very fair to the client, right? Even if, like you said, it's not something that your team maybe always loves, but the client probably does, right? The client probably appreciates that level of attention. And I was
100%.
wondering, are there like very specific details that you can think of that you kind of obsess over and maybe a client wouldn't even notice it?
I'm sure there is. There are probably a bunch of them. The one thing that really is a thing that I'm kind of a stickler about is wood finishes. So I've done a little bit of woodworking on my own. It's something that I love, wood construction, but like exposed wood, I feel like wood is beautiful and we can make it look great. It doesn't always get treated well. I hate when I see like a nice piece of oak trim that has this really glossy top coat on it. And I'm like, oh, just ruined it. Why didn't we finish it with something else? So, we have some wood finishing standards that we use to make sure that final product is actually something that is going to meet our standard. Say that, we use certain products for certain applications. We have certain quality control checks that we do. We have like a whole quality control checklist we do in our shop. I'm notorious. This just happened last week. We were finishing some doors out here in the shop, and I'm always walking through the shop and we're doing wood finishing, looking at the finishes, making sure that they're up to snuff. And I had, flagged there was one panel of a bifold door we were finishing that the color wasn't quite matching the other doors. It was just a little lighter, and I was like, I called our project manager over there and I was like, John, what do you think? I mean, I feel like this is a little off. And he's like, yep, you're right, this is a little off, so we're going to get this fixed before we deliver it to site. That's the kind of stuff that I think I noticed that maybe a lot of the other people wouldn't, but aim small, miss small, I always say.
Moving on to another realm of what Compass does, I know that you guys built your own technology platform, and I think that's pretty unusual for a remodeling company. So why did you do that?
Yeah, technology is not always associated with residential construction. When I worked at Mortenson, the commercial side, Mortenson did a great job of really embracing technology as a way to improve the way we operate, on a construction site. So doing things like 3D modeling of everything, we used to do things where we would scan the spaces and get what they call a point cloud of what does the space look like before we come in and remodel it for an interior renovation. How can we use technology on site to communicate better? We used to carry around iPads and take photos and share them up to our project website so that we could flag potential issues that need to be taken care of. So I saw how technology was used there, and I could see that. I mean, no, I don't think anybody's surprised when I say very few construction companies on the residential side are using technology to really benefit them. And that's something I wanted to change with Compass. And, we started small, and we've been kind of adding over the years. So, doing things so when we meet a client out at their job site, we do a thing called, we do a 3D scan using our phone or our iPad to get a baseline model of what their space looks like. And that's the model we use to do initial renderings and initial plans during the proposal stage.
Oh, that's super cool.
It's not that hard. It took a little bit of training to do, but it changes the client experience and allows us to be much more accurate on the front end. But in terms of, to your question of, we did actually build our own technology platform. This was relatively recent. We just started it this year. It was actually, I'm a bit of a busybody, and even though I was on paternity leave after my daughter was born earlier this year, I spent about 2 months of my paternity leave starting to develop our own estimating tool that we call Azimuth, and it started out as just an estimating tool, a tool we had been previously working on spreadsheets. There are a lot of estimating tools out there on the market for residential contractors. I never really got into them. I didn't really like them. I always found that they just lacked the level of customization and detail that I was looking for out of a system, so that's why we were working in spreadsheets for a long time. I think we did an analysis. I think our spreadsheet we were using before we switched to this new system had, I think it was 86,000 formulas in it. It was a really big monster, and it was a bit cumbersome to use, to be honest. And so I started developing this new software that would basically take the same concept of the way we estimate and plan projects in that spreadsheet, but just make it so much easier and make it just a much more cleaner interface to use, much more efficient to go through and actually do the estimate itself. I want my team, when we're doing an estimate and determining the cost of a project, I want us to focus on hard questions of how are we going to do this? What is the best way to approach this project? How do we want to install this? What's, all these bigger questions. I don't want them to be fumbling around with a spreadsheet trying to figure out how to get the numbers entered properly. And that's not a good use of our energy. So that's why I built the software. It's been a positive adjustment for our team. We've since integrated contracts, so now the software actually we integrate a DocuSign to it so we can automatically generate and send contracts out. We have all these little features in there that allow us to really estimate super accurately. We're actually, technology. Speaking of technology, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention AI. AI is the huge buzzword everywhere now, but it's not necessarily probably a huge buzzword in the construction industry. I personally am very interested in AI and how we can use it to make our teams more effective and get more better work done. So all of our team, leverages AI through various parts of our business, whether it's, just getting general questions answered, getting tasks completed. We used AI to develop our technology platform. Within that platform, we have different AI tools in there that help us either draft language or check the estimates. So we have a learning algorithm built in that actually learns as we complete estimates in the platform. It learns how we build projects, and it helps us flag potential issues along the way that we say before we commit a project and before we deliver an estimate to a client. We run these checks to make sure, is everything included? Did we miss anything? So we've incorporated that as well. And it's been, I know when you introduce technology to a construction team, there's a lot of skepticism, and there was a little bit for our team. But I think about a couple weeks into using it, I just had my project manager tell me the other day that, I was a little skeptical of this at first, but now I don't know how we lived without it. And so it's really been able to make it so that we're able to estimate more accurately, and our time to client of actually putting proposals together is much quicker and more accurate. So it's just been the best of both worlds for everybody.
How do these changes affect the experience of the homeowner compared to if they were working with contractors who were still using those massive spreadsheets that you talked about?
Yeah, I think the reality is that most contractors on the residential side are not using massive spreadsheets at all. I think that is, again, back to my critique of other softwares that are out there for the residential contractor, is that I just don't think that they get to the level of detail needed to truly plan a project. And I think, so to answer the question, how does this affect a homeowner? When I tell our clients, our team internally, when we're estimating a job, we're not just estimating how much it's going to cost, like how many square foot of drywall is it and how much does that cost, because we have a rate for that. We have to do that piece. But the other piece is, how are we going to execute it? How are we actually going to do this project? So, the example that ties to drywall is like, okay, yeah, I have 500 square feet of drywall. I have a rate for that. Great. How are we going to get the drywall into the house? Is it on a second floor with a staircase that has bad clearances? Are we, I've had jobs where you couldn't get a full sheet of drywall up to the attic, so we had to cut them in half and carry them up in half sheets, which makes the labor to do the taping and mudding a lot more, which means all this is to say that if you have a contractor who missed that stuff and they're missing a bunch of stuff and they're losing their butt on a job, there's a high probability that your experience working with them is going to change as they are being negatively impacted by their failure to estimate accurately. There are a lot of people out there that might start cutting corners. They might be hurrying. They might be trying to get things done, rushing through things, and that negatively impacts the client at the end because it's going to affect the work product. At the end of the day. So I think by having accurate estimates and being very detailed on the front end, it gives us and the clients confidence that we have a plan to execute this and do so very well, and that we won't have cost overruns. We won't have surprises, or at least we're doing our best to minimize those potential surprises. And I think that all benefits the client, because we don't want them to have surprises on these projects. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is just being accurate and making sure that we have a strong plan for how we're going to be able to do the project is why this is valuable to the client. And I think that they reap all the rewards of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You've given me a lot of good details about, Compass's commitment to communication, to focusing on details, to being organized. I think these are all things that really make Compass stand out. So now I have kind of an existential question for you, Brett.
Okay.
You could be doing a lot of things. You could be doing anything for your career. Why remodeling? Why did you choose this?
Yeah, I feel like I've joked with my wife over the years of, I almost have wanted to get out of construction, and it finds a way to keep pulling me back in all the time. I grew up, my dad was a builder, my family was builders, spent time on job sites as a kid. It's kind of just been ingrained in me, and there's just something that keeps bringing me back to wanting to work in construction. I think we live in a world where today we're meeting on a computer. We do a lot of our work on computers. Everything's virtual now, and there's something romantic about, the construction world is still this relic that has, while it's changed a lot over the course of decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, there are some things that haven't changed that much. And I find there's something romantic about the idea that we still have to go and install stuff with our hands. We still have to do this with our hands. I used to have a superintendent I worked with. He used to say there's 2D, there's 3D, and then there's reality. And, we have to work in reality when we're in construction. We have to be there physically with the stuff. How do we get this into the building? It's not like on a computer where I can just magically pop this into a model or whatever and it's good. No, I got to bring this in. How am I going to get it in? How am I going to get it into the spot that it needs to be in? If it's a big, long beam, I know our team today is installing a 600-pound steel beam for a structural project. If it's one thing if it's just a small wood beam, but when you have a 600-pound steel beam, you have to think really hard about how you're going to transport that. How are you going to move it into position? How are you going to make sure that when it gets there, you can keep it there and do all this safely so that, one of our top values is everybody comes home safe. We think of our team as a family, and nobody wants to see anything bad happen to their family members. So that's all I'm saying, that I like building things. I love walking into a physically built space and seeing, what somebody was able to design and build. And the fact that when you go into a building or a place, to think about how many hands had to be involved to make this thing come to reality. We did an analysis. It was an attic remodel project where they had an unfinished attic. We put in a master suite, and it turned out really great. And I was kind of like going through all of the different subcontractors we worked with, the different parties involved, the inspectors, the delivery people, the designers, the people who manufactured all the goods that got delivered to the site and got installed. And the number of like people or entities involved in that project was well over 100. I stopped counting. Wow. And it was like to think about how hard, it's so challenging to bring all of these different people and things together and to like put it all in place and actually have it look good and function at the end is something, it's kind of a feat, and it's something to be proud of. Like I talked about early on, it's something that's, the old saying is nothing worth doing was ever easy. I'm attracted to challenges. It's, I get bored very easily doing the same thing over and over again. It's why I love when a client comes to me and says, I had these other contractors say this can't be done. And I'm famous for saying, well, we can do anything you want. It's just a matter of what resources we're all willing to deploy to achieve this goal. And that's really where the rub is. There's something romantic about construction, as long as the short answer, though, to your question. Something gives me a feeling.
I love all of that answer. It really was existential.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it reveals a lot about, what construction is and just it being this tangible product, right? And it's a lot of times the place that people live in, so extremely important. I don't think you can overstate that.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't, for anybody who maybe doesn't believe me, I would challenge you to go to a place, Rome is a great example. Go to the Colosseum, go to the Pantheon, and tell me you don't have some degree of an emotional experience when you go to those places. To see these structures that were built, 2,000 years ago and that they still stand today, it is an emotional experience. And I think that maybe gets to the core of the answer to your question.
Yeah, the things that last.
Yeah.
You, as a company, talk a lot about craft without compromise. I know that's become your slogan.
Yeah.
And for good reason. What does craft without compromise mean personally to you?
It means that there's the old adage in the construction industry is that you can have quality, you can have speed, or you can have price. Pick two. You can't have all three. And I think that our slogan is, while there's some truth to that statement, I think the reality is that you can achieve all those things, and you can do so in a way that really serves our clients. And you just have to be intentional about it. You have to be intentional about how you get there. And we think, we want to deliver craft to our clients. We want to deliver a high degree of quality, but we don't want to compromise organization, communication, process, schedule, just the general experience for clients of having a construction team in their home. It's a very personal experience. So it's not just about the work. It's about the journey getting there. And I think that's what sets Compass apart is, we want to not only have a beautiful product when we're done, but we want the process of us getting there to be really stress-free and maybe even enjoyable. I know construction projects don't tend to have the association of being enjoyable for anybody other than the people like me who are, love construction. But can we make it easy and make it a lot less stressful than maybe the client had expected, and it makes it a really enjoyable experience? That's, what our goal is. So I think that's what craft without compromise means to me. It's doing all the little things right, but never forgetting that we have this attention to craft and trying to build something that's going to last longer than maybe even ourselves, hopefully.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
So for all of our listeners who've gotten this far with us in our discussion, is there one thing that you really want them to take away from what you've said? And this is particularly for listeners who maybe are starting a remodeling project.
It's something I say all the time at Compass. Construction is not a commodity. It might feel like it, but it is not. If you are paying less, more often than not, you're getting less. It's just a question of where is that? Are you getting less stuff, as in they're doing less work? Are you getting less service? Are you getting less quality? Organization? When you're looking to hire somebody for a project, number one is don't hire the cheapest person necessarily, because you'll almost undoubtedly be disappointed because, you have an expectation And I think it's really important for you to make your expectations very clear to whoever you're considering hiring and make sure that they feel like they can meet those expectations. Don't just assume that they can do stuff and that they're going to be able to do all this stuff without you having a conversation with them, because we're construction professionals. We're not mind readers. We have probably an idea in mind of how we're going to achieve your project. But it's, if you have any specific needs or goals or desires, it's important to voice those and communicate them early on and make sure you and your builder are on the same page. It's, again, full circle back to this communication thing. Make sure you're vetting the people that you want to work with. Make sure you're being considerate of, are they going to deliver the right level of quality? Are they going to deliver it on time? Are they going to, are they going to communicate with me along the way and make sure I know what's going on? I mean, these don't always seem like important things when you're going and you're thinking about, I just want my kitchen done. I just want a new kitchen and I don't care how we get there. You do care how you get there. It takes a toll on you. And I don't want that for our clients or for anybody who's doing a project. So I think just being very thoughtful about who you're hiring, why you're hiring them. Not every contractor is great for every job. We are not great for every single job. We are relatively picky about the projects that we want to do, that we think are a good fit for our skills. Our clients should be, thinking about this from the same perspective of what's the type of builder I want to work with, what are their values, and are they reflective of my values? Because you're going to spend a lot of money with this company. My one answer is construction is not a commodity, but I wanted to elaborate a little bit on that answer.
You are always willing to help a potential client or an actual client understand the process better of, what does remodeling entail? What should they be asking? What should they be aware of? What should they be demanding, if they're working with other companies? So that's just to say, I encourage anybody to reach out to Compass and find out, what can you provide for them before they've ever even signed anything with you, any kind of contract. I think that it's a massive offering that you guys provide that not all companies do. Most companies do not, right?
Yeah, that process, it's worth just touching on. Starting out, if you want to work with Compass, go to our website, fill out our form, but that basically gets you into the queue to get what we call the Remodel Roadmap. So we don't just do bids or estimates. Our roadmap we call it a roadmap because it's much more comprehensive than that. We do it for free. We do spend a lot of time and effort. We call it a $4,000 value. I think it could be more. But we do it for free because we want to prove our value to our clients before they hire us. We want them to feel good that they are, choosing to partner with somebody who has their best interest in mind. So we do not only the estimate, but we put together a rough design, an early design. We do some 3D renderings for them of what the space that they're describing could look like. We build a rough schedule. We start sourcing some key materials a lot of times. We are doing a risk assessment on their property to determine is there things that are going to come up along the way, old structural or old piping or electrical issues that we need to be aware of and build into our plan so that it doesn't surprise us partway down the way of the project. These are all parts of that roadmap process. So I can't emphasize enough that it's more than just an estimate. It's really a comprehensive plan. And, our clients who choose to consider us for a project get to keep that at the end of the day, even if they don't hire us. They get a lot of great information that they can use to do whatever they want with. But it's been, since we rolled this new kind of offering out a couple years back, it's been really highly positive. Our clients have loved what we've been able to provide for them and are always grateful, even if, sometimes they aren't able to do the project for one reason or another afterwards. But they're always so grateful that we've been able to actually really shine some light on what the process is and really give them a lot of clarity before they start.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we will provide a link to kind of explore a little bit more about that and see if somebody wants to apply if they're at that stage with a potential project. Is there anything else you want to share that's kind of related to what we've talked about today, Brett?
Integrity is one of our core values of, we say do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing. We try to live that value every day. We try to do the right thing for our clients. We see ourselves as advocates for our clients, not just a contractor or somebody they hire. We really do look out for their best interests. And, we ask a lot of questions during the process of getting on board with a client because we really want to understand what's driving them, what their goals are, so that we can make sure that we take those into consideration throughout the project. And, sometimes it makes sense on a project to call a pause and call a time out because something has changed or something is different than we expected. And we want to make sure that we meet those clients' expectations along the way. So we're just very value driven. I feel like there's a tendency in the construction industry to assume that every contractor is trying to screw you. And there are people like that out there, but I hope that Compass never gets grouped in with that mentality, because we do try to do what's best for our clients and look out for them and be an advocate. And again, we'd like to build partnerships, not just for one project, but we really want to be, your builder for every project you ever consider, or at least the first call you make. Maybe we're not a good fit for whatever reason, but, we'd love to be, one thing we offer our past clients is, we do a lot of consulting for them. If they need something done or they need to hire somebody for something that maybe is not really in our wheelhouse, we will try to guide them and help them find resources, because we see our partnership as it doesn't end at the end of a project. That's just the end of the first phase. Our partnership continues well into the future, and we want to be there to take care of you long term and make sure that you guys are happy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's a good final point to make here, to let potential clients know what the relationship would be like. And I think clients who've already worked with you are very aware of that. So anyway, I thank you so much again for having this conversation with me today. And I hope that everybody who's listening has gotten a lot out of it. And I'll talk to you soon, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Thanks, everybody.